Aloha, how's everybody doing this morning? Kaiwaza with you, or whenever you're watching this tonight, afternoon here on a day off, not a good day to go to the beach, so I am going to record a video for you, continuing our journey through my Hawaiian record collection. And today we come to a group that I really love called the Polynesians. Interestingly, their entire career was recorded on budget label recordings, primarily Crown Records. They are a Hawaiian group, Hawaiian people. However, their career was not in Hawaii. Their career was totally in California on the mainland, recording for the budget label, and also I think in various combinations, performing in groups at some of the restaurants, tiki bars and things there. So yeah, so consequently this group, although I love them so much, is unknown in Hawaii. I mean, nobody really knows who they were or much of anything about them. And if I say the Polynesians, even when I was working at Hawaiian radio, people were like, what? So we're going to look at all of their records. They have quite a few, but I think I can get through all of them today. I love them. My first exposure to them was very young. My grandfather in Pennsylvania, when I was a little kid, had several of their records, and I loved them then, and I love them today. And first one we'll look at is, in fact, one of the ones that my grandfather had, one of my first exposures. The album is called Hawaii Calling by the Polynesians. I like it because you can see the members of the group here, who are Harry Beatty, or Batty, Sam Kaapuni, and Bob Nichols, with guests Bernie Ka'ai, Lewis, Ernie Tavares on steel guitar, and Maria Tarangi, who was a Tahitian singer who was featured on this album. And for many years I thought this was Maria Tarangi, but it's not Maria Tarangi. I just thought it was because I was a little kid, I didn't know.
As bright as a star at the barefoot, the drums start beating on a rhythm that seems to insist that you enjoy the show. The honor of the day is laughter and play. Cares just seem to go.
Where to begin? So many songs I like on this album. I basically like the whole thing, start to finish. Their version of Yellow Ginger Lay, I think, is absolutely one of the most beautiful of all time. In fact, when I worked at KCCM Radio, I added that song onto rotation. And even Israel Kamakaviva Ole one time was a guest DJ, and he asked me, when I was in the studio with him, who he'd been hearing a version of Yellow Ginger Lay by a group called the Polynesians that he'd never heard before, and he thought it was so beautiful and he wanted to know more about them. So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, love this album. The albums I'm showing you first by the Polynesians are the individual full albums, you know, of all released as one album as far as I know. Aloha, Hawaii, also of course on Crown Records. There's some change in some of the membership. I'm not sure which is exactly the order that these albums were released in, but Sam Koki was steel guitar, and this one Lonnie Sang, a member here. Then we have the record Blue Hawaii.
Every day my dreams come true. That night in June. Aloha and my thanks to you. My island moon.
Then we have an album called Beautiful Hawaii. Again, we see the group members. And this album was also released later on, exactly the same album by the same company, Crown Records, which they would often do with a different cover on it, but it's exactly the same record album. Then we have Hawaiian and Memories. I sort of like this one. It's a little more mellow than some of their other ones, but there's some really pretty steel guitar, a couple of steel guitar instrumentals on here I really like. And In the Evening by the Sea, Paradise Lost, Coral Island. I don't know, so I like particularly some of the songs on this album. This album was reissued, in fact, on Custom Records, another budget label, in fact, called Hawaiian Paradise. This is the same album. In fact, for me, this is the record I had as a kid, so this was my first exposure to that particular record. This is how I had it first, on Custom Records. Then we have an album called Polynesia. This is, these are not Hawaiian songs on this one. These are all songs from, Tahiti and Samoa, other Polynesian songs. In fact, it doesn't have the contents on the cover of this one. The crown could be really irritating that way. And then also this album was reissued or re-released by a different company called Directional Sound. This is obviously like when stereo was new and those kind of ping-pong percussion records where they were trying to emphasize stereo. Under the title Polynesian Percussion. And the artist is listed as Chango and the Polynesians, which I suspect they were just trying to cash in on Chino, who was quite popular at the time and sort of jungle exotica stuff. So, because I don't think there's any Chango and the Polynesians, it is the Polynesians. It's exactly the same record. There's some great artwork on the inside of this one, though. It's a gatefold. Love that. Yeah, but same record as Polynesia. Now we have a couple of instrumental albums they did that I love. Love the instrumental albums. I have one of my very earliest musical memories is that my aunt in Pennsylvania had this record, and we were playing it in her apartment, but I had to have been like 3 years old or something, seriously. Super, super young, but I just really I already had that connection to Hawaiian music, and I just have that vague memory of playing this record. I remember this picture, and I remember that the last two songs on each side are just drums rather than music. It's just Tahitian drumming. But this is a great album. Both of these instrumental albums by the Polynesians I really love. I wish production-wise they would have added a little reverb onto the steel guitar because it would have just taken it into the stratosphere. And their second album featuring the same lady. All these pictures you're seeing on these Crown Records, the colorful ones with the Polynesians, were not taken in Hawaii. They were all taken in California somewhere. That's where they lived and had their careers and whatever. So these are all like gardens and stuff in California. They're not in Hawaii. These ladies not living in Hawaii. Okay. And again, this record was reissued later on by Crown. Same record called Hawaiian Love Songs. Or no, that's not. That's this one. Sorry, that's this one and this are the same record. Yeah, I want to get a better copy. This one's really beaten up, but since it's just a dupe of another record, I'm not too worried about it, but I'll get it when I see it cheaply. Okay, now that I believe is all the, I think the totality of the full albums that they did. The rest of what I have that I'm going to show you is just other albums that were released by them, but they're just mishmashes. Like they're taking a couple songs from one album and a couple songs from another and mixing it up. And you know how a bunch of labels did that, so they would just keep reissuing the stuff year after year after year with different title. But it's kind of just more of the same music. So I'll just go through these quickly. Sweet Leilani, well, we know her. We've been looking at her, right, past few albums. On Crown. Hawaiian Wedding Song, my grandfather had this record, and at the time I didn't know it, but this is Sandy Warner, who was on all of the Exotica records by Martin Denny. I don't know how she ended up on this. Love this cover, Aloha, Hawaii, on Custom Records. Then we have The Magic of Hawaii, also on Custom Records. And like I said, these albums I'm showing here are just bits and pieces of the other albums, so I'm not going into great detail about them. Beautiful Blue, Hawaii. The most fair-skinned woman ever in Hawaii, although I'm sure she was in California, actually. Yeah. Romantic, Hawaii. The Best of the Polynesians. We've seen her on Milt Raskin's record. It's a gatefold, although I don't know why, because they're just advertising other albums, sets that they did, but this is on Contessa Records. I love that name. Contessa. And finally, from the Polynesians, I have a box set that does not credit them at all. There's no artist listed at all, but it's 3 albums. All 3 of the albums are the Polynesians, and it's called Aloha, Hawaii, and we see this great picture again. I love this photograph on here. This is from American recording artists out of Los Angeles, California. 3 record set, all music from the Polynesians. So if you find this for cheap, by all means, this would be a great way to get a lot of their music. I'll show you this was in really nice condition, actually, too. These records. So anyway, that's the Polynesians. I love them. Love their style, love the steel, no matter who was playing it, and yeah, I dig the Polynesians. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and have any comments you might like to make about it, or the Polynesians, or whatever. It's always good to hear from you. So that's it for one of my favorite groups, the Polynesians. We'll see you on the next video.